I'll actually reference a book called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, written
Ooh.
by Chip and Dan Heath. That book really resonated with me because as someone who was in these leadership positions where I'm going into schools to affect change, I would encounter a lot of people that were resistant to some of the change and would push back. And so I really wanted to understand how change works, what gets in the way of it, and how can you make it easier for people. They kind of looked at it as this framework that had to do with partly with your brain and partly with your environment. They use a metaphor of an elephant to represent the emotional brain because it's powerful, it's strong, it can be stubborn at times. And then the logical brain, they use a rider at sitting on top of that elephant trying to steer it. And so I like that because when you have an elephant and a rider like all in agreement, like we're going to go this way, you're pretty much unstoppable. It helps to frame what happens then when there's opposing views.
Right.
And when that happens, the emotional side can win over. So where this comes into the math change is that if we think about the emotional side of the brain, there are two things that often come to play here, which is one is that it could be that the teacher may not feel really motivated to make this change for whatever reason it is.
Right.
But if I don't feel like it's worth making this change, it's really hard for someone to, even if I'm reading articles, like Anne-Marie be a classic example of this. When she was giving me all these articles about fluency, I wasn't motivated to make that change. I hadn't had any experience to sort of fire me up to make this change. And so she was giving me things that were appealing to my logical brain. So the other thing that the emotional side of the brain that can be a barrier is just the feeling of being overwhelmed. To make that change means I'm going to have to like redo my whole math, get rid of all those flashcards. I'm going to have to figure out all these new games. I'm going to have to go to professional learning and learn all these things.
Right.
It is so overwhelming. It could be logical though. It could be that I don't understand how to do it.
How
it's
to
not
do
that
it.
I'm,
Exactly.
I want to do it, but there's so many steps. So how do I do that? So having clear direction and explanation and resources and things all can help my appeal to that logical side of my brain. But the third part of that framework is the environment. And what the authors of the book Switch do is they call that the path that the elephant and the rider are on. And the path can sometimes be the barrier, which is that I know how to do it. I want to do it, but we don't have any space for whiteboards in my classroom, or we don't have manipulatives, or we have a 40-minute math block and I really need 75 minutes. So knowing those three things, whether it's the elephant, the rider, or the path, helps you to then figure out how can I eliminate or move around some of these barriers.